live on YouTube today, so I just want to make sure you're aware of that for privacy reasons. Okay. You come into the room when the mute is on. You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Also, just to point out, if you do have a note taker, we don't generally let those in the room because it could cause some conflict. And we want to make sure that we have that set up correctly for you so everybody can hear as we go through this session today. And what we're going to do today is talk about the executive summary. And we're going to continue in a series of discussions that we've been having about the perfect kind of RFP response and how to actually draft that in the correct way using new tools that are available to you. And I'm going to call attention to some of those as we let folks in the room here. Just one second. Okay. Continue to let individuals in. I want to thank you for coming today. I'm going to continue in here. I have this Google slide presentation that I have been leaning on. And just as a quick recap, I won't spend too much time on this because we want to get into the meat of the presentation. This is one of our quick Zooms. It's about 20 minutes long, maybe about 25 minutes. It is immediately available in a recorded version after the session at our YouTube channel, and that's on YouTube at GovDirections. If you happen to go over there, I'd really appreciate it if you give us a little like. If you're there now, go ahead and just click on the bottom there and follow it and subscribe to it. No cost, of course, and it alerts you when there's a new session. We do these routinely. And our primary purpose is to take this information that you're learning about every day. Our primary objective at RFP Delivery and GovDirections is to put in front of you those bids and RFPs that match you, that you've got a strong interest in. And as we've been going through our courses, we have talked about the concept of really searching and finding the right RFP using your indicators of success. There's a document. If you step back a couple of sessions, you will see a description of what that actually means. But pulling information and using tools, AI preferably, the way to do it. And also, I've been doing this for a little more than a decade, couple of decades, and actually probably about 3 decades. And taking just your common sense and understanding really what you're looking for, so that whenever you're zeroing in on an RFP, you're going after the ones that you really have an opportunity to win. And as a part of that, you really kind of need to fully understand what you're looking for. And when you're looking at the indicators of success, you want to make sure they, of course, are personal to you and mean something, and so tied to your company, and also rewardful, meaning that things that presented to you help you in a way to make sure you maximize your profit for your organization. That's an overall goal. Governments don't want you to lose money, and they want you to provide a good service, and so it's important that you do that. And so you find something that not only is right in your wheelhouse, but also generates a nice income for you, and that's the overall arching goal. As we go into learning about the RFP, always refer back to this one slide. There's a couple of different slides I use. One is that it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everybody do it. But here, it's scary at first, but just don't stay scared. Step in there and solve the problem that might be there. So it's actually a problem staying scared, and we don't want to have that happen. So we want you to take the mystery out of the RFP and start writing a strong response to help you win. Now, as a part of that, it really is truly important that you understand the overall RFP itself and how it works. As a part of this, I've been talking about the structure of the RFP. I've been walking you through various sections, and I've been using some real life examples to teach in a fun way. We use a little drag in there to kind of emphasize, have a little bit of fun in life, and don't take everything so seriously. I know there's a lot of pressure these days to really win that contract, is always is, but understand that it's really a life work balance, and I try to profess that. Contract instruments themselves, you're going to hear me talk over and over again about the RFP, and because the request for proposal is truly one of those documents that really allows you to shine as individual. There are, of course, multiple contract instruments that governments use, and you should be familiar with them, but the one that most of us are responding to is the RFP. And I drive home this true definition of an RFP. It is a bidding process, a solicitation process, meaning they want you they're looking to acquire your services, and you're competing against others. It's for something valuable to a community. and I'm sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't on video. And it's important that you know that they're treating this as a business process, a business proposal, and taking everything providing it to them in a format that helps you shine as a business. And so it can't just be taken lightly. The government doesn't take it lightly when they're issuing these documents. Sometimes take years to get to the point where they actually are presented to you on the streets to actually respond to them. Sometimes there are documents that are going over and over again, of course, every year, every quarter. But a lot of the RFPs that you read really took a concerted effort by a team of individuals who came together to draft a document to get your attention. And when you see it on our site, I'd like to always point out that it is a competitive situation. It's not speculative. It's not a done deal. It's a process where they're trying to get you to respond to something because you have some sort of knowledge and that you can share with them and help them achieve an organization goal that they may have. When you look at a typical RFP or any of the documents that you see, you can see these common parts, these parts that we should pay attention to. We've talked about the statement of work, and if over and over again, I'll go back to it needs to be singing that song in the back of your head. You're the one that I wanted to find. In fact, one of the ones did to me, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. But then you're going to pay attention to these other areas. And we talked about yesterday about the evaluation criteria and how important it is in your cover letter and drafting the perfect cover letter. And while the cover letter is the first item they see, oftentimes the next part that you're responding to is that executive summary. And the executive summary is also meant to catch the eye of the reader so that it really sells you. And frankly, many times that's the only part that's getting read for many of you. And then the rest of it, because you didn't do a good job, and the rest of it doesn't even get viewed, and it goes in that filing system over on the left that potentially you don't want to be in. Okay, and you want to actually encourage them to read through. So one of the things you really want to do in an executive summary is tell the reader what to expect, and this should actually be reinforcing the initial start, which was the cover letter. And then you'll get a little bit more, we give them a little bit more information, a little bit more flavor before you actually tell them all the parts to a bid. I always include an executive summary unless they tell me not to do it. Okay. Sometimes they'll have some pre documents pre-formed. They want you to use their forms. Otherwise, the first thing I'm going to do with an executive summary, and then that's going to guide my reader of my proposal into the next phase and these other parts that we are paying attention to. So let's just get into the challenge. And it's not a problem, and the tools that we actually use, we have to govern them. And it's sometimes it's a test of our character, how much patience you have. I was dealing this morning helping someone draft, and it was giving me the wrong answers. I was like, come on now, chat. I'm using Chat GPT. You can use others, Claude and other methods, but you sometimes have to remind it to stay focused, to say the least. And always remember that they're drawing the system itself should be drawing you on your indicators of success. And if you haven't done that, you want to actually take a look at our form. I'm going to drop it in the chat box. I encourage you to use it. A little cheesy maybe, but it works. It helps you focus on what you actually are looking to work on. Okay, and that's the main purpose of it. Freely available. Just go in there and help yourself with that information. I ask for 10 indicators of success. These are the items that you're seeking. I got a little quick video to help you define those. But that's going to drive the overall conversation that we're having today. And as you remember, I went into our system here. And if you're not familiar, when you go in, you're actually able to go in and do some keyword searches. And I was looking for a compensation study analysis. I was alerted actually by an email. It comes to us, your alerts are here. I'll share that today. As you step into it, you can go back in. It's built on your settings. And of course, somebody has went in and did a very refined setting this morning as we do demonstrations. So there's no alerts today. So there's nothing there, and there's simply nothing there. Okay, but then you capture your bids. Your captured bids are here, and you can keep them there, and this is your pipeline. And so you can always call up that bid as you're working on it. Now, the bid that we were working on yesterday, here's our YouTube channel. This is where you'll find this bid. It's video afterwards. Okay, so you can go in there and watch that. But if you go into the actual document and you see them, you can come in on the left-hand side and search. You can do filters. Remember, I was looking at a compensation study services. Excuse me, that's actually going to be in consulting. So we got different categories based on the marketplaces that you serve. Consulting, and then in Virginia, this project was in Virginia City, a small town, in Virginia. As you remember, one of my indicators of success is a southeastern organization, smaller government. So I met those criteria. That's RFP right there. Now we went through it yesterday, saw the details that the local government's not doing September. I'm probably going to wait a little bit before I actually write my RFP, but I can start visiting some of the information that they actually are seeking. And of course, we stepped in to our premier service, which is to help you actually organize, to actually start placing some of this information here. Here's that Dropbox, and then within the Dropbox, we have developed an RFP process, an RFPs of interest, and I've got a folder now I have created for my Haymarket RFP response. And so when I get started here, I'm actually going to start with a document, and as we go into some of these instructional parts here, I'm actually going to add me a folder, and I'm going to call it Response Haymarket. Okay, so I can get it started, and sometimes they may want me to put a specific RFP number of some sort. And if you remember yesterday, we drafted that cover letter. Let's see if I can go back and get that cover letter, RFP, Google. I'm going to close that out there. Go back here, active RFPs of interest. I saved it under my templates. Okay. This is the sample yesterday. And in my document, I'm going to just copy this over. In fact, I'm just going to actually save this as my RFP. Let's just build from here. RFP response, because it's already nicely built here. Now, as we talked yesterday, I'm going to build my capability statement. I'm going to put it right here behind my letter, which I think I did. Yes, I did right there. I'm also going to do me a cover sheet. Cover sheets, I'll talk about that one day, but basically, make it look good, and how to basically put your logo on there, put some key piece of information, have your capability statement, and then this is where you're going to build your response. And now in the response itself, what I'm actually going to do is go in and build myself insert myself a table of contents. These are some basic tools elements that Google does. It gives this to us for free. I can come in and just type this in. And it helps me stay organized, okay, in the process of doing that. Because the first thing I'm going to do here is insert me a page break, and then I'm going to go in and do an executive summary. Now, you may ask, what are you going to put in your executive summary? Okay, I'm going to spell it correctly first, okay? And as I do this, I'm actually going to start formatting the correct way. And I'm going to give myself maybe a heading 2, okay, bold it. I always like to keep everything 12-point font, okay, and then I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna start my chat. It got it over here going, and we were writing it up here. Let me see here. I think I did that yesterday here, okay. And as a part of this, here is what we were looking at. Here's my cover letter, and I'm gonna continue the conversation in chat GPT to an extent that it can guide me, okay? And it's not going to be something that I'm going to actually use in the final, except as a guide. And then I'm going to actually modify it to really take and show, my individual flavor of my organization, like you like to call it, okay? So let's say, okay, let's proceed, chat. And I always talk to this almost like it's a human. You have to forgive me, and I say things like please and thank you. You don't have to do that, but it's just how just how I was taught. Good shepherding. And let's proceed, chat. Can we start with an executive summary? Okay. And before I do this, I asked earlier, and as I was getting ready for this meeting here for chat to come in and help me out, because it suggested that we actually had the meeting, and it's actually getting very unusual how this stuff works. I find it very interesting. And I came in and I said I wanted to do a presentation today about writing the executive summary, and it gave me a nice little, let's see here, a nice little graphic. Let me, if I can pull that back up. And as a part of that, I said we need to do three. He suggested that we do three important parts in an executive summary. And I said, well, what are those three? Because I'm always looking at trying to learn something, and it's also it's part of making sure that we have a good cover letter and details here. And so as I stepped into it, let me get to that part where I said, okay, Friday Night Lights, and let's go in here. I did a lot of things already today. I try to stay productive. There we go. And so here's our meeting. It said we needed to talk about 3 items. And I said, what are those 3? And it said, first, there's a direct alignment with the evaluation criteria. Okay. And a compelling value proposition and a recent success story. Okay. And so it gave me that, and as well as a nice new graphic here, which I thought was actually helpful. But I think I lost it earlier. There it is. And then it actually drew himself another logo. Really likes to do the logos lately, but a direct alignment with the evaluation criteria, compelling value proposition, and a recent success story. Okay, so I want to remind chat, okay, as we actually prepare this executive summary to do that. Okay? That meets your own suggestions. And let's see where it goes. Okay. Copy to paste what it said. Okay, so it's giving me a direct alignment with evaluation criteria in a format that I'm certainly not going to leave that title in there. Okay, but I'm going to see what it does. Okay, so it's giving me 3 compelling value part of the recent success story. Okay, so here we go. It looks like it's a good start. Okay, I'm gonna copy that over. Okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna reframe that. Okay. Lose some of those headings, you know, but staying focused on areas. So this understanding of the project, because it's with the evaluation criteria. Remember yesterday we talked about the evaluation criteria and how important it was that we maintain that, a project understanding and experience and qualifications, the project methodology, the references, and the cost proposals. Those are the 5 methods that they were going to use to evaluate us in this response. And so consequently, it's important that you reinforce that, because that's really the only thing the government can actually use to consider you against others and compare you, because they've told you they're going to do that. So they have to follow the rules. And it's a part of it. And this is the part of the ABCs of contracting that they have to follow. Accuracy. They have to tell you accurately what they're expecting of you. And they have to be brief about it, very straightforward and clear, so there's no confusion. In fact, if you are confused, it's your responsibility during the Q&A period of time, which is an open period typically, to ask, what did you mean by this? If you're not clear, if not clear. When we look at FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulations, or DFARS, it is very clear. They're mandated by law to have language that can be easily understood. In fact, as you go through, you'll see a lot of words that potentially are defined so that you can actually see a definition. It is mandated that they do that. And it's the same way with local governments. When you look at many RFPs, they'll actually have a section where they'll define particular items so there is no confusion. Accuracy, brevity, and clarity. And so whenever you do a return response to them, you've got to practice the same approach. Okay. And make sure you do so. Okay. And because that is so important. So whenever they see your answers, it also is flowing through. So it's accurate. You're speaking to them that everything you say here is truthful. I actually have about 35 years experience, but I was always taught to never go above 25. And so as you go into this, you want to, and you'll speak about that, but more than still accurate. Okay. And I've worked and I'm typical, and I'm tying it back to their qualification range, not necessarily my qualification specifically, but how did I fit theirs? Okay. But mine are more broad. Okay. And so there, I don't need to say how broad that was. I've actually worked for a major university with 2,000 positions. And I didn't really say that because I could literally send a signal that I'm a little bit too large for them, or I don't really understand how a small organization works. So in this particular case, small town, I would want to make sure that I'm drawing that part out. The product methodology, how do I actually do things? Okay, references that I have. And sometimes I might even put in here a short summary of those references in the executive summary. Call attention to that right away. And step into the other parts of it. In this particular case here, I'm always going to take out these obvious chat requirements of drawing lines, potentially numbering systems, or putting the 1, 2, 3 ABC. They'll do that. It does that routinely. I don't like that. I've actually started training mine not to do that. Okay, and part of it. But here, and we may want to even re-type this, or might say, in this particular case here, I would probably maybe come back and say GovDirections is built to serve local government. Okay, something like that. Something assertive, makes a point, gives them a document. Sometimes even here, you might even use a quote of some sort that your founder or somebody who's in your organization may have built. So you draw attention to making you personal to them. Okay, and but here's still a value proposition. Well, here's the value that we actually add. Okay, coming in, I might actually draw a little bit more to that in an actual RFP in the methods part. But here in the summary, it should be very succinct and to the point. And then draw attention to a success. Success is always important, and the reason why is when you're trying to catch the attention of the reader at this point, their main goal is really one purpose, and that is to make sure you can accomplish the objective. Okay, and there is no better way to do that than showing them success that you've done in the past, even if it's not specifically tied to the exact same item that they're doing, but something that you've been successful at. It's helpful here. And I've had folks when they first started out, if they're doing maybe custodial services potentially, or potentially doing some training of some sort, drawing attention to the fact that they've managed a household and they've done that for 20 years, and then they've re-engaged in the marketplace to have a business of some sort. And that success was that they were able to manage that household and keep things in an orderly way and use that as a story of success. Define what it is to you. And one thing I always ask my clients to do when I first meet with them and I first vet them, as I say, tell me the one thing that you are success at, and do that in a paragraph. And this basically, it could be the complexity of something that you've solved. It could be a price point that you've achieved, something tied to business first, but if not, something successful in your life. And this is the thing that you brag about at your dinner table. Okay, no one's going to brag about you like you will, and it's important that you learn how to do that in a proposal. And so, as you're closing out your executive summary, you want to have that success story, and then this is where you move into your next section, and that is the response based on what they're actually asking for. Okay, and so I'll leave you with that today on YouTube. And I just like to always, as I'm going forward, quickly update my table of contents that shows that I'm actually working and achieving something as I'm going forward. But well, thank you for joining us on YouTube today, and I'm going to open up in the classroom today for questions that you might have.